anytime I make a comment on any company that competes with Tesla, I get a lot of negative feedback and hate, as if I absolutely hate Tesla. I don't hate Tesla. In fact, I'm a huge fan of Tesla. I've been driving a Tesla for 10 years. I was a major, most of my portfolio was made up of Tesla stock between 2015 and 2021. So I've been a huge fan, and from my perspective, there's like Tesla, the company, which I think is has just killed it and knocked it out of the park, and continues to do things on the cutting edge. And then there's Tesla, the stock, as an investment, which I thought got ahead of its skis in 2021 when it hit over $400 a share. And even to this day, it's only, 4 years later, it's only like approaching $500 a share. So 2021, my call of like Tesla having been overvalued a bit was correct. And I also think it's overvalued even today because it has roughly a $1.6 trillion valuation with less than 100 billion in revenues. And the revenues are going down. Like the trailing 12 months revenues was minus 1.6%. So when you look at Tesla as an investment and you ask the question, when are you going to have double digit revenue growth? And in order for a $100 billion revenue company to have double digit revenue growth, it has to have over $10 billion of additional revenue and keep its existing revenue, right? And where's that additional $10 billion of additional revenue going to come from just to get 10% growth? Well, the Tesla community or Tesla investors would tell you it's all about robotaxis and the Optimus robots. Well, robotaxis are unlikely going to generate even single-digit billions of revenues in 2026. So, if you were to be realistic about it, if Tesla were to pass where Waymo is today with robotaxis in 2026, and even double what Waymo has done over the past year in 2026, then it would have roughly $700 million in revenue from robotaxis. And if it does it at a lower cost to Waymo in order to sort of get more rides out there, then the actual revenue might be even less than 700 million. So if they just knock it out of the park and have $1 billion in revenue, that would be a huge success from a robotaxi perspective. But it's still 1 billion in revenue compared to 100 billion in total revenues. So it's roughly at 1% increase, assuming they hold on to the other 100 billion in revenue. And from the robotics perspective, even Elon does not expect to sell significant numbers of the Optimus robots in 2026. The first publicly released version of Optimus will likely only sell in the tens of thousands of units in its first year because they want to test them out, make sure that they're solid, they're good, they get their manufacturing processes down, and they sell them at a profit. So don't expect there to be 1 million units in the first year. Tens of thousands of units means, again, sub $1 billion of revenue in the first year. So 2026 Tesla revenues is also not going to be significantly greater than 2025 Tesla revenues. So, they might have single digit growth, but double digit seems unlikely. And even if they get to double digit growth, maybe they get to 10%, maybe they get to 11%, but we're not talking about the 50% growth rate that Tesla used to have. And that's the kind of growth rate that Elon predicted as late as 2021 that they would have in the foreseeable future. So, you know, from a revenue and profitability perspective, I think Tesla is going to continue to be where it is, at least for 2026. And then, 2027, if things are, starting to scale, they might actually get to solid double digit, 15, 20% growth and possibly beyond. So 2026, I think, is going to be still a rough year for Tesla. Now, contrast that with Rivian. Rivian is on the verge of launching a high volume product. This is their Model 3 moment. And Rivian's R2 line, which is roughly a $50,000 vehicle, is going to start to scale towards the end of 2026. But even if they sell in 2026, even if they sell a total of 50,000 units, which would not be that many, but they should be able to sell somewhere close to, 30, 40, 30 to 50,000 units, maybe if they're lucky, 60,000 units. That's going to be additive on top of the R1 sales that they have. And, sure, R1 sales are going to possibly go down a little bit because of the R2 sort of eating a little bit of the revenues. But there should be a solid 30 to 50% year over year increase in Rivian's revenue. So the revenue growth rate should be much more solid. And of course, Rivian is still going to lose money in 2026. So all the naysayers will still have something to hang on to, but they should be well on their way on a path to profitability at the end of 2027, early 2028. And that makes Rivian at a $22 billion valuation a much sounder or much more upside investment from my perspective. So that's how I compare the two companies. And whenever I do this online, I get a lot of hate from the Tesla community, but I'm a Tesla fan. I drive a Cybertruck still. Yeah. So
It
that's how
seems
I
like
see it.
it seems like a lot of the comments I'm reading from the Tesla community is because in their minds, Tesla makes the best vehicle. They will be the only electric car maker in the future. Is like an argument I've seen. When we make this switch from gas to EVs, right now we have a bunch of different car companies that you could choose from, and all of them are relatively successful in regards to like having cars on the road. When we switch to all electric, how many players do you think there will actually be? Do you think it'll look similar to today, where like there's a lot of different players, or do you think it'll start to consolidate and be more like phone manufacturers where you have like Apple and Samsung and I don't know, Google?
Yeah. That's a great question. It is a huge industry. It's like $1.5 trillion car market. Now, with autonomous vehicles, that could actually shrink the car market considerably because if you could, for example, share one car between two people, or let's say two cars between four people in a family, rather than buying four vehicles, or just have a car on demand if the car cost of a car on demand is just as cheap or even cheaper than owning a vehicle because you could share that car with a whole bunch of people, then the total number of cars sold, let's say in 15, 20 years, is probably going to be significantly less, by as much as maybe half as many cars as are being sold today. And if that happens, you're now talking about an industry that might shrink in size considerably, or maybe people will spend similar dollar amounts, but the quantity of vehicles sold will be half as much. But they're still paying for the same amount of money for transportation in general, because that's sort of like where the money is going. It's for people to get from point A to point B, and uh, and as those shifts happen, this type of disruptive change where uh, cars become autonomous, they're going to also become EVs. They're going to also be software updated and software run and AI driven. I do think that there's going to be economies of scale that will likely end up consolidating the 10 or so current car companies that we have, that each have 100 billion in revenue, down to probably, I want to say four, maybe. Like, I think there's a good probability that at least five or six of them are going to go away and
Roughly gets
consolidate
cut
over
in
the next,
half
yeah,
in regards to like
over the
competition.
over the next 10, 15 years. And I think it's going to be the ones that are making the least amount of investment in EVs and software. So VW will probably be around. They seem to be taking it a little bit more seriously. Hyundai seems to be taking it very seriously. They have the
Yes.
most models. They have like software. They're Korean based. They have less concerns about copying others. So they have cars that literally look exactly like Teslas, even the interior with just a single monitor in the center, same size, same everything, same visualization. So um, there's a good chance. And of course, Chinese companies have already been doing this copying thing. And have been proliferating inside of China and in other countries, but Europe and I think the United States are going to have to end up doing some sort of protectionism from a tariffs perspective to protect their industries. Otherwise, the European and American car companies will get destroyed by Chinese ones. So, there will be a few Chinese ones and probably 3 or 4 European and American ones in total. That's
So
how I see it. If you were to fast forward like 15 years.